27 minutes to 8. You're listening to Byte Into It on 3RRR with Vanessa and Dan. And if you're a regular user of Instagram, you may have noticed a little bit of a change in the way that they're presenting their interface. And there are all kinds of ways we can interpret it, but we thought let's get someone who knows what they're talking about to come in. So we are joined right now by Associate Professor Li-Ping Thong, Associate Dean of Digital Design at RMIT University's School of Design. Li-Ping leads the animation, games and digital media programs and is recognised for her deep expertise in user experience, or as we like to call UX, user interface or UI, and the evolving role of digital experiences in our daily lives. Tonight, she's here to share some possible motivations behind Instagram's redesign. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Li-Ping.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here today.
It's our absolute pleasure. So, did you want to get for the people who perhaps don't use Instagram or perhaps haven't logged in since they've made the changes, did you want to give us a bit of an overview as to what's actually changed?
Ooh, okay, so it's a big change. It's a repositioning of the button. So the biggest change being the direct messaging, as some might recall, it's at the top right of the app. It's now moved towards the bottom middle. So prime real estate positioning that replaces create posts, which is what we usually have been accustomed to for the last couple of years. So that is a massive change, which we could unpack a little bit more. And then the second biggest change is then Reels. So Reels has now been at the bottom left corner, the second button in your bottom navigation bar, sitting right next to the direct messaging button. So that basically means that they are kind of prioritizing both the DMs as well as Reels in their apps, and then we could discuss that further, but those are the main changes. And just to point out as well, with the app itself, the updates haven't really quite rolled out. You need to actually change it in the settings, but just be mindful if you do that, you can't revert it. So just be cautioned. So that change will be imminent, but for now, if you don't want to move it, don't change it now.
What our listeners first of all need to know is that Li-Ping is such an expert that she's not even looking at her phone to describe these interface changes. And I had to reopen the app to jog my memory about everything that's gone wrong. All I know is that my thumbs have naturally been hitting the wrong spaces for a couple of days now. And it is infuriating when you have this sort of change. But we're not going to be reactionary against a change. You know, we like to embrace technology here where possible, or at least critically talk about these things.
Indeed.
So what is going on? We know that there's been a mass move to video. That trend has been happening all the way back from things like Vine and YouTube's massive success. But what does it mean as these things are kind of coming through and colouring our social media platforms?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not just videos, but like what's coming up now, like Vine brings memories, good memories. But we're talking short form videos. So that's where we are heading towards, which is what Instagram call Reels. So in terms of timeline, basically what we're looking at is basically they're trying to catch up with TikTok. So as you all know, like TikTok emerged in 2018. That's the timeline that it started. And during COVID, it's just kind of surged up. Amazing. And then so you just search, and then that we get a lot of Gen Z users that really got into the short form videos, into that. So basically in 2020, Instagram being like the mostly photo app, it then went into Reels. So their response to TikTok in 2020 was the introduction of Reels. And YouTube, on the other hand, 2021, their response to TikTok was YouTube Shorts. So basically the vertical format, short form videos. So that's the response in terms of that.
No one's immune from this trend.
And I do remember back when Reels was first introduced into Instagram, they were trying to push it. They were putting notifications up and sending you push notifications like, have you tried Reels? And by the sounds of it, people haven't really been taking it up, and that's why they're going a little bit sneaky now. Is that the idea?
It was a bit of a flop back then, but then they have to actually embrace that, and then it would actually turn a lot of the long-standing users away, people who sign up to Instagram basically using it as a photo app. But that trend is actually moving away. This is the new norm, because like a lot of the Gen Z users, in fact, the wider demographics, they are more into the short form videos, and that's across all social media platforms, not just Instagram. So we're seeing that recurring trend.
Oh, that's interesting to hear, because I've definitely observed with my friends the slowdown of the posting to the grid and feeling like you're a bit of a dinosaur to post anything there. I mean, I'm trying to use it as like a memory aid over time. Just what was I doing a month ago? But very much, the short little stories. Now, is there a difference between a short video and a reel? Like, when does something jump and become a reel?
There's two things. So in Instagram, there is stories. So there's Instagram stories and then there's reels. So stories is basically the ones that you can post 60 seconds pops, and then it only shows to your followers, so your friends and whatnot, people that are following you and whatnot. The reels, however, is for people that are not following you. So this enables you to actually gain reach. You are more discoverable, and then you get 3 minutes. And then so the algorithm actually rewards the reels right now. So you can actually be more searchable and you get far bigger reach and following.
So for many of our listeners who are a bit concerned about privacy and maybe have a private Instagram, are they still able to post reels?
They should be able to post reels, but only if they wanted to.
Yes.
But they will be able to see reels as well equally,
Yes.
because basically right now it's all AI driven, and so it's curated content to your feed as well. So you get fed a lot of reels as well.
Liping, we've talked a fair bit about reels now, but you mentioned earlier another thing that Instagram or Meta or whoever we want to talk about are putting forward is the direct messaging.
Yeah.
What's the motivation behind that, do you think?
Oh, that's a big one. So the move of actually going top right to the middle bottom is direct messaging, because the way that we are actually consuming content or actually engaging with content is actually not through public likes and reshare and all of that. It's what we call as dark social. So dark social is basically one-to-one kind of sharing of content and then discussions and all of that. So it's basically you can't see the likes and all of that, but it's direct one-to-one kind of mess. So the way that the users are actually interacting with each other, no longer public.
That's an interesting kind of observation, because certainly the whole idea of the early social media, your MySpaces and your Facebooks, it was all about broadcasting yourself and putting yourself out there and all of this kind of bearing all. It seems like that there's almost a reverse trend now where people are going back to being very private in the way that they use these platforms to interact.
Yeah, user behavior has changed, so therefore UI and features would have changed as well. So this actually signifies like a pivoting shift of Instagram, putting it in that primary position, and they're reframing themselves that direct messaging is the way to go, because I think a lot of the demographics are approaching that kind of direction these days.
This is very interesting to me because we saw Snap have a meteoric rise and then a similar fall in popularity and almost get a bit of a sketchy reputation for being the place that content would only last a certain amount of time and then vanish. And young people really took to it, and lots of people liked the idea that things weren't there forever. And Instagram seems to have embraced that too. But, what's different about the way that it's allowing people to message each other?
They're still able to message each other, but instead of a temporary kind of measure, it's sort of like a private social circle in terms of sharing the content itself. So that's the main differentiator between the two apps.
And do you think that their reputation has remained, good in terms of being a place, in terms of what sorts of content thrives on their platform? What do you think that reputation looks like?
With Instagram. So I think it depends on the algorithm and the feedback loop of the individual that actually responds to the content that they have. So as mentioned earlier on, so it's curated by AI. So it's not discovered feed, but rather it's curated and tailored specifically for the user based on the engagements and the shares, and then you get a feedback loop that keeps circling, and then you get presented the content that is relevant specifically to the user.
I want to sort of unpack something a little bit, I suppose, excuse me, left of centre. With these changes, and I'm very much a muscle memory kind of person when I'm, using an app on my phone, you know where to press the button. And in recent months, my keyboard has started going haywire, which made it nearly impossible to type messages, and don't get me started on this. But a minor change like that feels like it's either going to be something that is going to confuse a lot of people or frustrate a lot of people, or people will go into this weird dark conspiracy land where they think, they're doing this so that I have to start sending messages. What's your take on that kind of muscle memory and familiarity of using the interface as it is?
It is a big one. It's in the land of UX that is a significant change. That is a major friction for users, and it is expected. And then I think they're embracing that because that's the direction and where they want to take the app moving forward. So it's going to drive users away. And then there's been a lot of complaints since last week. But the users would adapt and they would stay. The ones that would actually adapt and really like Instagram, but the ones that are not really into direct messaging, I think that would actually drive them away. But I think it's quite significant because they're actually embracing that and then moving away from static photos and reels and direct messaging. So this is the lane that they're picking in adapting to all the other apps that's out there.
Is there much that we know about the strategy explicitly, or are we intuiting it from the changes?
They've already started training us since the start of the year. So if you're an avid user of Instagram, at the start of the year, you will notice that they move away from their photo 1-to-1 ratio. So typically you get the squares in the photos. And at the start of the year, they introduced instead of 1-to-1, you get 3-by-4 ratio. And if you want to be even better in algorithm, you get 4-by-5 ratio. So what they're trying to do at the start is to gently nudge you and introduce you to the vertical kind of format videos, but in photos. And then now they introduce voila, let's go to Reels. Vertical videos is the way to go. So they're gradually changing user behavior without us even realizing that.
That actually, you've just crystallized that for me, because all of my photographer friends and really design savvy friends who had beautifully curated square grids were up in arms when that change came through. And I just thought, it's a little change and I'm not that precious about the way that grid looks. But for some stupid reason, I didn't connect it to videos. Why? That's wild.
It's a long agenda, but it's a very significant change as well from a designer's lens, because that is Instagram's visual identity when they first started in 2010, I believe. So it's a very big change, but they're repositioning themselves once again to Reels.
What is you say it's a big change? How often are these kind of magnitude changes happening, and what's the driving force behind it? Is it just we're reading the lay of the land and the world has changed, or is it more about wanting to lead and change things or to drive the change itself?
They're slowly losing relevance basically in the race. So TikTok's gaining that, and then you would see, and this is not just Instagram moving towards these kind of video formats. LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and all of that, they're actually moving towards the real kind of format. So the motivation is basically to make sure that the wider demographic, which is enjoying these kind of short form videos, very short form ones, not long horizontal videos that we are accustomed to, they're moving towards that to make sure that it's agile and adaptive to what the users are using.
So it obviously comes down to making money. Now, when Instagram were independent, they were still pushing, content and influencers and what have you into our feeds, and the algorithm definitely had a strong influence. I noticed that the algorithm is changing and more able to be influenced faster now. Do we know much about how Meta thinks about making money through these apps?
Meta is actually using Instagram to do the race with TikTok, right? So they're doing the same thing as well on Facebook. So it's the same kind of gestures and interactions that they're introducing as well. So the Instagram ones, the Reels specifically, is actually to encourage content creators to make relevant content and to monetize from that as well. So I think that's the play here. Speculating, but yeah.
And do you have a position on the criticism of Meta that they're not a company that generates new ideas anymore? They're a company that succeeds by acquiring other companies who generate new ideas.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they all do, don't they? It's unfortunate, but then we're stuck using it. I like to use Facebook, and then I've been using it for quite a while, but you adapt, and then they keep making all these changes, and every time it just gets worse and worse. But
see, because I remember back in the day when, and we were talking about this last week, I think, the idea of when Facebook changed their interface, it was happening reasonably frequently. Every year or 18 months, sometimes every 6 months, and the world was up in arms about it. And it was, oh my God, the message button's been moved. It doesn't, it's been a while that Instagram was static. And so this feels like it's a bigger deal because it stayed the same so long. You mentioned that the driving motivation was the lack of relevance. But is there an ideal amount of time between changes, do you think?
I think the small updates, the small movements like pixel, little changes, colors and all of that, that would be quite regular. But this one would be a very irregular one because they will actually lose users. The hardcore ones would actually stay on with such a change as well. And over time, it would actually be a good thing for them. Yeah.
It's so rare that we get someone with a really strong design background in studio with us. And I do wonder, do you have a take on skeuomorphic icon design? Because Instagram very famously had the logo that looked like a vintage camera. And then they've moved away from that, both stylistically and then strategy-wise. Do you have opinions about skeuomorphism in design and the move away from it?
Skeuomorphism, like it's cyclical. It used to be like
Cyclical, there you
10
go.
years ago it's skeuomorphism, then we went to flat design, and then
Yeah.
we're back full circle again. So like
Well,
even
what
in a-
about all the things that look like glass and candy and
yeah, but like they're back to flat design again. So
Yeah.
like our students always like switch between the two. But yeah, and then it's also partly driven by the iOS and then like the Android interface as well. So a lot of it is driven by that. So yeah.
What's your take on liquid glass as a designer?
I like liquid glass, but like it's often frowned upon like in design land. But personally, it's on record now. Like I like liquid glass.
We won't hold you to that.
you can change your mind. That's the privilege of being with a design background.
Terrible UX though, but like it looks so good.
You heard it here first.
Oh, I love it. So controversial and yet so right.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking with us tonight about the changes to Instagram, which we are all living through right now, some under more sufferance than others.
Indeed. We've been speaking with Associate Professor Li Ping Thong of RMIT University School of Design. Li Ping, thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you.
It is just coming up on 10 minutes to 8. We've got a couple more messages to hear and then we'll be back with some more tech talk, funnily enough.